Welcome to the Explainer. So, the next version of the internet is being built on this really powerful promise, a trustless world. But here's the catch. What if that's actually impossible? Today, we're diving into why our ancient brains create this fascinating paradox right at the heart of our digital future. Okay, so here's what we're going to cover. We'll kick things off with that whole trustless promise. Then we'll track how trust has evolved online and see how our own psychology plays into all of this. After that, we'll look at the actual data, see how trust is built in this new space, and then wrap it all up with what this means for you. All right, let's start with the central and pretty provocative claim that's at the core of the next generation of the web, which you've probably heard called Web3. Let's do a quick thought experiment. Imagine you're buying a house. Scenario 1, that's the world we all know, right? Banks, lawyers, stacks of paperwork. But scenario 2, that's a peek into Web3, where all those human middlemen are replaced by code. So the big question is, which one of these actually makes you feel more secure? So this big idea behind Web3 is that it's trustless. Now, that word is a little weird because it doesn't mean it's untrustworthy. It means you don't have to place your trust in a person or company acting as the go-between. Instead, all your trust goes into the technology itself, into these automated smart contracts, and the unchangeable public record of the blockchain. So how on earth did we get here? I mean, to really get why a trustless system sounds so good to so many people, we need to take a quick look at how our whole idea of trust online has changed over time. You know, way back in the early days of Web 1, it was pretty simple. You either trusted the person or the company that ran a website, kind of like a newspaper. Then Web 2 came along, the social web, and we shifted all that trust to these huge centralized companies like Facebook and Google to manage our data, our connections, everything. And as we all know now, that led to some major problems. Yeah, things like the Cambridge Analytica scandal were a massive wake-up call. It showed everyone just how dangerous it could be to trust these big platforms with all our personal information. It created a real hunger for something different, something that put control back where it belonged, with the user. And this brings us to a really crucial shift. The thing we're supposed to trust has totally changed. We've gone from trusting familiar, tangible companies to being asked to trust these really abstract, complex systems, the code, the network protocol, and the online communities that run them. But, and this is a big buck, here's the really fascinating twist. For all this revolutionary new technology, the tool we use to decide if we trust it, our brain, it hasn't changed one bit. Because here's the secret. Social psychology shows us that even in a so-called trustless world, we're still falling back on these ancient mental shortcuts to figure out what's safe. The need for trust doesn't just vanish. It just gets moved somewhere else. Yeah, for decades, social psychologists have known that our brains judge pretty much everything based on two simple questions. First is warmth. We're basically asking, what are its intentions toward me? Is this thing on my side? And second is competence. We ask, can it actually do what it says it's going to do? Is it capable? And the crazy part is, this isn't just for people. Our brain runs this warmth and competence test on everything. A person we just met, a brand we see an ad for, an AI, and yep, even a brand new technology like a blockchain. We're always asking, is it a friend? And can it get the job done? Okay, so now that we have this psychological framework in our back pocket, what does the data actually say about who people are trusting online right now? The answer? Well, it might just surprise you. Check this out. A recent study revealed something pretty fascinating. People were asked to rate their trust in companies not to misuse their data on a scale of 1 to 7. The Web 2 giants we use every day, they got a pretty dismal score of 2.44. But the newer, less understood Web 3 companies, that score jumped all the way up to 3.54. So what does this tell us? Well, it seems like trust in the old guard, that perceived warmth of the big tech companies, is so completely broken that people are already more willing to take a chance on a new alternative, even if they don't totally get how it works. But that trust is basically a leap of faith, because the knowledge gap here is just enormous. A staggering 87% of people in one study had never even heard of self-sovereign identity. And that's the core Web3 idea that you, not some corporation, should own and control your digital ID. And this lack of understanding, it's the single biggest barrier holding this whole thing back. On a 7-point scale, people who called themselves experts rated their understanding of Web3's goals at a 5.76. But for non-experts, that number plummets to 4.60. That is a major gap in just basic comprehension. So, here's the puzzle right. If trust in the old system is broken, but understanding the new one is the main barrier, how can anyone build the trust that's needed for Web3 to actually take off? Well, the research points to 3 really clear strategies. And guess what? They map perfectly to our brain's little warmth and competence test. First, you foster a community, which signals good intentions. That's warmth. Second, you provide clear, simple education, which shows you know what you're doing. That's competence. And third, you connect the digital and physical worlds to make it all feel more familiar. And that builds warmth too. A fantastic real-world example of this is what Tommy Hilfiger did. During a metaverse fashion event, they sold NFTs of their new clothes. But here was the brilliant part. Those digital tokens could be redeemed for the actual physical piece of clothing, delivered right to your door. They perfectly blended the digital and the physical, which made the new tech feel familiar, tangible, and way less scary. A super powerful way to build that crucial feeling of warmth. And that brings us to the most important point of this whole explainer, the one thing to really lock in about the future of digital trust. No matter how fast technology moves, no matter how complex the code gets, or how decentralized the network becomes, our ancient, unchanging brains are always going to be running that same, simple diagnostic check. Does this have my best interests at heart, and can it actually deliver? Warmth and competence. That's it. So at the end of the day, the future of the internet won't be trustless. It's going to be a future where we have to be more conscious than ever about a simple question: are you trusting the code, the community, or the brand behind it? Answering that for yourself? Well, that's the key to navigating everything that comes next.